Okay, so it is 1:15, so we're going to get started here. Hi, everyone. My name is Mackenzie Dumas, and I work here in the admissions office at SUNY Plattsburgh. Thank you for joining us for SUNY Plattsburgh's virtual open house. Today we have Yang Yu and Maureen Squires from the Education Department. So we're going to start with a presentation today and then open it up for some questions. We ask that you hold your questions until the presentation is over. If you are having any difficulty viewing or hearing the presentation, please submit it to the chat box and we will work on fixing the issue. So let's get started. Yang and Maureen, I'll have you introduce yourselves and then we'll get started with the presentation.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Yang Yu. I'm a department chair of the undergrad program, including the BS four-year childhood education program, and also the undergrad portion of the BS MS Ed education programs. Maureen?
Hi, I'm Dr. Maureen Squires. I am the department chair for the MST and the BA-MST program, which includes the Adolescence Education Combined Program. And I am also here to answer questions you might have about special education, because I also teach in that program and help students who are interested in possibly pursuing another certification with us after the BA-MST. There's also a SPED certification that you can pursue in grades 7 through 12.
There we go. Okay, Maureen, I believe you are starting us off here.
Okay, so I'll start by explaining a little bit about our 5-year combined adolescence education program. So in our program, if you start as a freshman, then you can anticipate being here about 5 years, both falls and spring semesters. If you follow our recommended course sequence, you should not have to take summer and winter courses. Some students do decide to do that though, if they need to improve their GPA or take a course for either their content area in arts and sciences or for education purposes, or if you just choose to modify your schedule for any reason. So keep in mind, 15 credits a semester means you're on target for a 5-year graduation, and we'll change slides. So what I really want to highlight today is that you'll be very flexible and nimble. And we all know that that's really important right now, given what's happening in the world. So one of the great things about our BA-MST program is that you'll actually graduate with 2 degrees, an undergraduate degree in your content area, and then your master's degree will be in education. So here we can recommend you for teaching certification in one of 8 areas in earth science, biology, chemistry, English, history, mathematics, physics, or Spanish. So you'll leave with that, and that way, if you decide that teaching is not for you, either after 4 years or later in your future, you want to make a career change, you will have that undergraduate degree in your content area. You'll also have a lot of opportunities to participate in field experience. Some of that will happen at early levels, at the undergraduate level, but for our program, most of that happens at the graduate level. And then another advantage of our program is you'll have at least 2 academic advisors, one in your content area and one in education. And we work together very well. That way you're getting great advice on what to register for and when, right from the get-go, and then throughout the entire program. And I'll have you switch again, please, Mackenzie. Thank you. A couple other benefits. This is a money savings if you attend our program, because the first 12 credits you earn of the graduate coursework you're taking, you're actually only charged undergraduate rates. So that's pretty much a whole semester worth of coursework that you're taking at the graduate level, but only paying those undergrad rates again. It's also money savings in that you'll be able to finish earning both degrees in 5 years. If you were to do this separately, pursue a bachelor's and then a master's, it typically would take you longer than 5 years. Again, once you're employed in New York State, we have such rigorous standards for earning teacher certification in New York State that you will likely be able to find employment in any state. If you want to do that afterwards, you can pursue reciprocity and see if you'd be able to teach in other states as well. And schools nowadays especially prefer to hire teachers who already have a master's degree, so our program will allow you to do that. Now, I mentioned something earlier about certification. So you'll be eligible for one certification in either teaching math grades 7 through 12 or English grades 7 through 12. If you finish our program and are also interested in special education, then we can talk, because there's another certificate program that you could apply for with us and take a few more courses and then be eligible for another teaching certification, which would allow you to also teach special education in grades 7 through 12.
Great.
All right.
There we go.
My turn.
It is.
Welcome again to the webinar. So I'm going to just walk you through very briefly the two childhood education programs. The first one is a 5-year combined childhood and a special ed program. So this program is a 5-year. It combines, Mackenzie, can we go to the next slide? So we combined the undergrad childhood education program with a graduate special education program. When students complete this program, they'll be qualified for 4 teacher certification, two in the areas of childhood education, so birth through 2nd grade and 1st grade through 6th grade. And then special education certificate, birth through 2nd grade and 1st grade through 6th grade. Next slide, please. Well, the uniqueness of the program is, of course, the first one is the bachelor and master's program after 5 years. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, you will get certification in 4 areas. In addition to those 2, you also be having the opportunity of being involved in early field experiences very early in the program. Traditionally, it has been over 500 hours. It's going to be slightly different given the COVID-19. If you start the program in next fall, this probably will be the same. You'll be working with a team of faculty members who are very experienced and very passionate to work with our teacher candidates from the areas of childhood education, special ed, literacy education, and also in technology. Next slide, please. Okay, career opportunity. Apparently, you'll be able to teach and work with the students in all those certification area in childhood and special education. You also will be able to work in early intervention program, like a pre-K, preschool programs, and in private schools in the United States, and also in those areas or states where New York State teacher certification is acceptable. Next slide, please. Okay, very brief idea about the curriculum of the 5-year combined program. You can see there are several big chunks here. First one is general education requirements. Dr. Maureen Square mentioned the BMST program earlier, and this general education program requirements is actually common to both teacher education, programs in birth to 6th grade and 7 to 12. So we share this in common. Then the second component of this 5-year program is a major, we call it major departmental requirements. It's about 47 credits, plus another 10 credits of cognitive requirements. So that's total of 57 credits. Those are the education courses. You will see courses begin with the EDR, EDS, and EDU. Those are the chunk. Next component of this curriculum, this is a little bit complicated, okay? It's called a content concentration. There are 2 parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about the detail in the next slide. And then we will have the graduate part of the core curriculum. And Dr. Square mentioned just now that to be able to, join this combined program, one of the advantage is that you'll be able to complete your first semester of a graduate work at undergraduate tuition, because they switched student teaching with a coursework. So you're going to do student teaching last semester, and this is the same here. So 42 credits at graduate level, but you actually will complete the first semester 12 credits undergraduate tuition. Okay, so graduate course is actually about 30 credits. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the content concentration. I know you still probably have questions. All right, as you can see, total of 30 credits. 15 credits is called the generalist content, and then 15 credits is called a specialization. This is New York State requirement, it takes a little bit of time. The first 15 credits, you take one course from 5 different discipline area, including English, arts, math, natural science, and social studies. The second 15 credits, you have actually different options. There are a total of 6. You can take 15 credits in one area, or you can see the last one where the red arrow start. You can also do interdisciplinary study, taking one course from 5 different subject area. But remember, in your specialization content, out of the 15 credits, 9 have to be upper level. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so that's the 5-year combined program. I'm going to just talk very briefly about the 4-year childhood program. So this is a 4-year program, and it will give you a bachelor's degree in education after you graduate. Next slide, please. After you graduate, you'll be able to be certified to teach elementary school children in grades 1 through 6. The uniqueness of this program is similar, except to those 3 additional certification areas. You get a lot of early field hours starting from lower grade level, and you'll be exposed to integrated curriculum, including, the special education, literacy, technology, and multicultural competencies. You will be able to work with a cohort of faculty member as well as peers throughout the 4 years. And the undergrad part of the undergrad program actually serves as the foundation for the combined 5-year program. So say you're enrolling in the 4-year program, and then later in the second semester-ish, you decide you want to switch to the combined 5-year program, you can just switch into that program. The transition is really very easy and seamless. Next slide, please. Okay, job opportunity. Compared to the 5-year program, the 4-year program offers relatively limited job opportunities because you can only teach elementary children grades 1 through 6. For example, if you want to work with a kindergarten or pre-K kids, this program won't certify you to do that. You will have to get into the 5-year program. Other than that, I think it's pretty much the same. Okay, next slide, please. All right, program requirements. Unlike the combined program, which has a graduate part to it, so the combined program is 150 credits. This one is 120 credits. The only difference between the two is 30 credits at the graduate level. Everything else is pretty much the same. Okay, next slide, please. All right, I'm just going to ask Mackenzie to click and go through these pictures real quick. These are the pictures of our students, previous students, at different occasions. Mackenzie, can you just click through them? Classroom. This is students participating at conference. You click, please. Okay, again, a classroom activity. This is our dean, the dean of EHHS school. Is it called a school, Maureen, now? Okay, School of Education, Health, and Service. Our graduates. Students bulletin board in the hallway, and this is our main office and courtyard. I think that's it.
Great.
Question?
So I'm going to stop presenting the presentation slideshow, and we'll open the floor up to questions. Again, if anyone has any questions, you type them right into the chat box, and I will be asking Maureen and Young those questions. So I do have some questions ready, and Maureen and Young, you just decide who's best to answer them. If you both want to put input in, you both can as well. So one question is, how do I choose the right program for me? Out of the three that we talked about today, how could a student go about finding out which one would be the best one for them?
I'll jump in
Okay.
and start. Is that okay, Young?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I would say follow your heart, follow your passion. If you've had experience either babysitting or volunteering or through jobs working with children or adolescents and you're drawn in one of those directions, I think that's the first step, is to decide I really want to work more with elementary or younger children or more middle school and high school. Then once you figure out that, you can decide if you want to have the most marketability, most hireability from a childhood program. Then your best bet is really to go, and I should say, and if you're truly interested in teaching students with exceptionalities or special education needs, then you would really want to consider more of our combined program, because that will put you in the best spot to be hired when you earn your degrees and certifications. Adolescents, that's a different story. What you're going to look for once you decide that you want to work with middle school and high school age students, then you're also choosing what content area you feel really strong in, really passionate about, that you'd like to major in. And in addition to that, you might want to think about where the high needs areas are. And I will be very open and honest with you, not every area in middle school or high school is considered a high need. So right now we have a lot of students in our history and English programs, BA MSc programs, but there aren't necessarily a lot of jobs out there. Our students are well prepared, so they will do very well in our program. They have great testing scores when they have to take their certification exams, so they will get hired, but it'll be a little trickier for them. Whereas if you're interested in math and science and those are your strengths, those are high needs areas, which means you'll have a better chance of getting a job offer in those areas.
Great. And Yang, do you have any additional input for this question?
Yeah, I did everything Dr. Square just said. One more thing I just would like to remind you that when you decide what to do, either the lower level or the 712, I will highly recommend you think about your interest and also your strength. Right? Typically, we'll hear folks talking about, well, I'd love to work with children, or you hear folks talking about, I really enjoy math. I have this 7th grade ELA teacher, I want to become her. So you can listen to yourself, and then that's the interest part, okay? And then also think about your strength. Dr. Square mentioned just now, we do have some high need area, like even in elementary, the field of elementary education, I think STEM is a great need. We don't have a lot of teacher candidates who are willing or feel comfortable specialized in math, even though it's a very small, chunk of your curriculum. But don't force yourself to those areas simply because you think you will become more compatible in the competitive in the future in the job market. And then you may end up struggle. I do have students like this. They think, oh yeah, this is good. It will make me very strong, in the job market. But then they found themselves struggle through those math courses and then ended up dropping, and that will waste some time. So balance your interest and the strength in between the two. I think you probably will have, find a happy media. Again, think about what are you more motivated by? Are you more motivated by working with younger children, or are you more motivated to become a teacher because your love for a subject content area? The content area probably will make you a better candidate for the 712 because you'll be able to work in a content area. And if you're really very interested in working with the children, the 1-6, elementary probably is a better choice.
Great. We do have an incoming question. Thank you both so much for that thoughtful response. I think that's really helpful for students. Someone asked, if you are interested in the 5-year program, when do you apply? As an incoming freshman or once you are a student at SUNY Plattsburgh?
I think in general, when do you apply will be for you, Mackenzie. When you can apply, when you apply for when you started to apply for the college. If you're not really very sure, you can become a freshman and then later you can declare a major. But there are some requirements you have to meet when you apply for the program. For example, Okay, I'll talk about my program, and then Maureen, you can talk about the 712 LSN program. Okay, so for the childhood and also childhood combined special ed program, you need to have a GPA of a cumulative GPA of a 3.0 to enter the program. I think that's equivalent of 85%. Mackenzie, am I right? About 85% of your high school grade. So that's the very basic requirements. If you do not have that requirement, you probably won't be accepted into the program until later. Until you have the GPA requirement. Maureen?
And I would say most of our students apply when, as seniors in high school, when they're applying to college, they'll apply to the BA-MST program then. If they meet the eligibility requirements, they are accepted in. If not, you can start here as a freshman. My recommendation would be to start as a freshman in the content area that you would like to teach. So start as a history major if you would like to pursue history teaching, or math if you'd like to pursue math teaching. And then once you're here, we call it an internal transfer, or you can change majors from the straight history program to our combined BA-MST history program, for example.
Mm-hmm. And that the difference between these two programs is because of the different structure of the program. Dr. Square mentioned the BMSD program. You know, your undergrad really is in the content area, your history in the history area, ELA or math or biology. Well, the 1/6 of the childhood and childhood combined special ed is you start the program in the first semester. So, you know, instead of staying in the content area, because basically you don't have a content area unless except those 30 credits of a content concentration. So you start in the childhood or the combined childhood special ed program. And I think that's a slight difference in between the two programs.
And I'm glad Dr. Yu is emphasizing that, because it's not easy necessarily to transfer into the childhood or the combined childhood program because of that reason. Whereas for the BA-MST, it is. You can transfer in as a freshman or even as a sophomore, because our first education course you take isn't until your sophomore year. So that's one big difference between our two programs.
Okay.
Thank you. So another question would be, is there any field work before student teaching?
So yes, there is. It depends on the program you're in. For the BA-MST program, you'll get out as an undergraduate to do more observational field work at first. And then once you're at graduate level, you'll have 2 curriculum courses and you'll complete a minimum of 50 hours in each. Typically, it's considerably more than that. And then you'll have your student teaching placement, which is a full semester long in the last semester of your program. Our combined program is very different than that. They use a cohort model, which we don't. And through that, you'll have a lot of experience that I'll let Dr. Yu talk about.
Okay, so the childhood 4-year program and the combined 5-year program actually follow the same New York State requirement that we are supposed to meet a certain number of early field experience. Early field experience refers to the field hours you have to fulfill before you start student teaching. So pre-student teaching field experience. We have, I think, Maureen, we have the same requirement, but it's a structure in a different way. So in the 4-year or the 5-year combined childhood special ed program, the field hours are integrated into the we call it cohort education courses. So at every level, you know, 1st year, 2nd year, 3rd and 4th year, there are certain education courses you take every semester, and each of those courses will have certain number of hours of a field requirement. I think it was ranging from 10 to 25 hours. So you will have to fulfill those requirements starting from the 1st semester throughout the last semester of your undergrad study, which is the 7th semester. And then at graduate level, you also have, gosh, I forgot, practicum. Maureen, do you know how many hours are in there? But there's another graduate courses, it's called a practicum. You have to, you know, once you register in those courses, you complete certain hours. That's all before student teaching.
Great. And can both of you talk about a little bit about where the field experience locations are and what students are doing in their field experience?
Well, at this time, because of the COVID, there are a lot of transitions, and there are going to be some changes. We are actually not really very sure moving on how exactly those changes will be, but traditionally, those field placement will have been in the local elementary and secondary schools. And for the childhood and special ed program, 4-year and 5-year, typically has been in the local elementary schools, and also those school buildings close to Plattsburgh, like Cumberland Head, Beekmantown, Peru, Saranac, and those areas. So those are the placement of our classrooms. I think for Marine, it's pretty much the same, because we don't conflict with each other because we're at different levels.
So it is similar to that for our early field. One thing I want to stress though, because a lot of students, if you're coming from a larger area where there's public transportation, Plattsburgh is smaller and we have limited public transportation. So something to keep in mind is you might need to carpool to some of the placements because we're in a rural area and we may go as far as 30 to 45 minutes away by car. So that's just something to keep in mind. We help connect you with friends so that you can get that set up. If we do know that you need to walk, we'll try to accommodate that, but we can't guarantee it because we also have to remember that we're a guest in all the schools. So sometimes it's a little tricky for us to get access to schools. If there are a lot of new teachers in there, some of the principals say, we don't want to stress our new teachers out right now. Or if there's been retirements, they might say the same thing. So we do our best to get students as close to the campus as possible, but sometimes we do have to move around. And then once you get to your student teaching experience, there are 3 different regions that you can select, and we do our best again to try to get students in those regions, and that expands even a bit farther. So the North Country is rather large geographically, so you could be placed in a lot of areas. And I will tell you, our students who might not be excited about having to travel over to Malone, for example, because that's a bit of a drive, they actually have great experiences over there. We find that the teachers, the parents of students are very welcoming. They would love to have more of our students over there. And then it often has turned into job opportunities, either long-term sub positions or actual teaching positions. So if you're willing to travel a little bit, then that's great.
You both touched upon which courses are required for the programs, but is there a specific course sequencing that students have to take, and is it chosen for them?
In my program area, so again, for the adolescence program, we do have a recommended course sequence. There are very few education courses at the undergraduate level. Right now, as a matter of fact, it depends on the year you're coming in. We're phasing out some courses and revising and bringing on new ones. You'll be coming and probably only having to take 2 undergraduate education courses, and the rest will all happen at the graduate level. So the undergrad class, we do recommend that you take that in your sophomore year. The graduate courses, you'd have to wait until your 4th and 5th year to take those, and then we do recommend also through advising which courses you take and when to take them. Dr. Yu's program is very different.
Yeah, for the childhood ed and then special ed combined program, most of the, what we call, when I say major courses, I'm referring to those major EDU, EDS courses, right? Education courses. They are sequenced, starting from semester 1 to the semester before student teaching. The students follow through the sequence. The lower level courses serve as prerequisite of the upper level courses. And I think with a very few exceptions, most of the courses are only offered in spring or fall. We don't offer, I think we offer 1 or 2 courses and probably 1 special ed courses in summer or winter. All other courses are only offered in spring or fall. Well, this is really very tricky for transfer students. If you're a freshman starting from a, brand new as a freshman from a program, it's no big deal. But if you're transfer students, remember, once you get into the program, you have to do fall, spring, and spring, right? If you miss a course in, for example, in fall, 2021, that's your first semester. You miss that semester, you join the program the spring after that, you will have to go back and take the course that is offered in that fall next year, because that's how the course is sequenced. It's very structured, but it also doesn't allow a lot of flexibility in that sense. But it's really very clean. You just move through the curriculum, and then you have everything done, and you're on the right direction.
Great.
Okay.
So another question is, where can I student teach, and do I get paid for student teaching?
I think Dr. Squares mentioned a little bit about it just now.
So no, you do not get paid for student teaching. That's a question that we actually will get often, because students are trying to figure out, how do I balance paying my bills while I'm out in the school? So unfortunately, no, there's no money that you're going to make from student teaching. And we typically encourage students not to work on top of student teaching, because you'll be exhausted, to be honest. You'll be expected to be in the school. Let's say we're talking elementary school that starts around 8 o'clock in the morning and ends around 3. Those are not the start and stop times for you. You'll be there when your teacher arrives at 7 or 7:30, and you'll be there until 4 or 5 or later, because there'll be after school meetings. You may be volunteering to co-facilitate theater or sporting events or things like that. So during the student teaching experience, they'll be very busy. And where do they go? So the North Country covers pretty much, we'll go all the way up to the Canadian border. So there are schools like Northern Adirondack and NCCS. We'll go down 87 toward, let's see, Sable will be down there, and there are some smaller districts, Mariah down there. We'll go over to the west, to Malone area. So that's kind of our North Country. Then we have a region in the Albany-ish area, because we have a branch campus in Queensbury. So we have a lot of districts there that we work with. And you have an option of choosing New York City.
One more thing, just keep in mind, when you student teach, Dr. Square mentioned just now, we don't encourage you to take a job because of that reason. Also, you cannot take any coursework during that time. The expectation is before student teaching, you're done with all your coursework. So you're ready for student teaching and then graduate. Keep that in mind.
Thank you. If a student has to leave for a semester or maybe 2 semesters for any reason, health reasons or whatever it is, when they come back, will they still have their spot in the program?
That's a very good question. I'll start, and then Maureen, you can share how different is it for your program. I think I mentioned a little bit earlier because the structure of the 4-year and 5-year childhood and combined childhood special ed program, so it's a little bit difficult for you to stay, so to say, in the program, in your cohort. Let's just say, suppose you start in the cohort of 2021, which is next fall, right? And then you took 1 semester off. After the first semester, you took the spring of 2022 off. When you come back, you're going to join the next cohort because of that reason. So we, not necessarily for health reasons, sometimes the student may want to do, for example, studying abroad. They have to plan that as early as possible with their advisor, so that we'll make a good plan for you not to be left behind, okay, to move along with the cohort.
So, and I would say it's similar for our program. Like Dr. Yu mentioned, it's important to think ahead. So if you are planning study abroad, we would want to know that early on so we can make appropriate accommodations. If you take a semester off, you wouldn't necessarily be a whole year off of schedule like you would be in the undergrad. You'd be a semester more than likely off. But something else to think about is if you're interested in the childhood program and if you have to take time off for some reason, you may be advised actually to finish up your degree in another area and then apply. We have a standalone childhood program that happens for students at the graduate level after they've actually earned a bachelor's degree. So that could be something else to think about in the childhood area.
Great. What professional skills are developed during this program? Marketable professional skills.
That's a very, very general question, right? In general, when we talk about the professional skills of being a teacher, to both the elementary and then secondary, we will say, B to sixth grade and 7 to 12. We talk about professional knowledge and skills in both the content area and also in the pedagogy area. Content area in elementary ed will be those content courses, and then that you're going to choose. I think in Dr. Square's area, and Dr. Square, you can talk about that a little bit later. The content knowledge actually is a little bit different. So in the elementary will be the elementary math and ELA, literacy, and social studies, and also science. Those are the content knowledge. Well, the content skills will be, in those areas, there are certain skills, not necessarily information, but there are certain skills like do math, right? Skills of doing math, the reading skills, and then the skills of doing science. Those are the content knowledge and skills. And in addition to that, we also will prepare our teacher candidates pedagogical skills and knowledge. So those will include, how do you plan a lesson? How do you analyze who you're going to work with? And then how you're going to help them to pick up the content, and also the learning skills and all that kind of things. So assessment, and what else? So those are the pedagogical content and skills. I think 712 is a little bit different. Maureen, would like to talk about that?
Sure. So yes, we have pedagogical areas that we would focus on. So, and if I were to break that down, I would say it's essentially three things. Can you plan effectively? Can you teach effectively? Can you assess effectively? And we'll help you learn how to do all of those things. And it requires knowledge on your part and skills. So we'll help you build those skills. You have lots of opportunities to practice that with us in the classroom, and then through your early field experience and in student teaching. But we also have an entire content. So I'll go to history, for example, because that seems to be our broadest area. So in New York State, if you earn certification to teach history, that means you're certified to teach grades 7 through 12, but it's not just US history, it's global history, it's sociology, anthropology, economics, participation in government, psychology, the list goes on. So the content there is very wide that you would have to know through your history major and through you doing some additional work on your own to make sure that you have that content knowledge. Something that Dr. Yu hasn't really stressed yet that I'm going to slide in there is we also focus on dispositions. And what that means is we look at the assumptions you have, how we can help you to really unpack those assumptions, and then how that's related to practices in the classroom. And I'll give you concrete examples. You may have gone to school and not known that my experience, I didn't go to school with any students with disabilities. Okay, it was assumed that those students were not capable of performing in a general ed classroom, so they were kind of educated down at the end of the hall and they were not included in any classes. So that's an assumption that we would unpack and see if that's true or not, look at the research, and then work on changing our habits if our habits were in line with that and supporting that, because it's not what research shows anymore. So we would work on creating new dispositions. And those are some of the behaviors that we'd be looking at in the classroom before we're out in the field and then while we're in the field. And a very simple example too is just, do you arrive on time? Do you take initiative? Do you take feedback well? Those are all really important skills. Do you collaborate well that teachers need in order to be effective? And if those are areas where we note some concerns, that does not mean you're automatically disqualified from moving on in the program. That does mean, though, we'll intervene to offer some suggestions and help you improve in that area so you can be successful.
Thank you both. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between an initial teaching certification and a permanent professional teaching certification, when students should be prepared to get each of those, and maybe what that process looks like?
Sure. We actually, in teacher education, we have both programs. The 4-year and 5-year childhood and childhood special ed program, they're initial programs, meaning that when you enter the program, you don't have any classroom teacher certification. The program will lead to what we call an initial teacher certification. Okay, so that's the initial certification programs. And then after a few years, after you graduate, you'll become an initially certified classroom teacher. I think it was a 3-year. I'm not really very sure. And then you're supposed to add a certain number of in-service courses, and you meet the requirement, and then you will become, through a certain process, you will go ahead and get the professional certificate. Another way to do that is in teacher education, we also have certain programs that are actually what we call it advanced certificate programs. Those programs usually will admit folks who are already initially certified. One example will be in a special ed program. We have a standalone special ed program that only admit students who have a teacher certification. They are currently certified teachers. They enter the master's program, and then they're going to get whatever they're going to get after that. It's going to be a professional certification program. So those are advanced certificate program. We used to have a literacy ed program too, but that program was closed.
And at my levels, so at the adolescence level, it's same. So you would complete our program and earn a recommendation for initial teaching certification. After 3 years of mentor teaching in the field and you're earning your extra continuing education credits, then you can apply for your professional certification. Something I'll also add to this discussion is that we have a director of certification on campus who is here. She has a great updated website. So if we have questions, if you have questions about certification, you can always go to that website. You can then contact Kelly Pickering and she'll follow up with you. Something to keep in mind is that certification is separate from your degrees. So we, the college here, oversee your degrees. And if you complete all of our degrees and complete certification requirements, and those certification requirements are decided by the state, then we can recommend you. And the state is actually the body who will award you your teaching certification or certifications. That means you complete our coursework because we're registered and approved through the state. That's great. We've included the workshops that the state requires in there. The one thing that we don't require, we can't actually require, are you to take your certification exams. We highly recommend it though, so that as soon as you finish our program, you have done that also. And that's sometimes the one thing that students wait to do, which is the only thing that would hold them up from getting their certification from the state.
Mm-hmm. Well, you don't have to worry too much about that, even though the certification exam is not part of our curriculum. We do have, Dr. Squares mentioned, we have a web page of the certification officer, and she actually created a kind of like a suggested timeline of when you can take what will be appropriate time for you to take your certification exams. So there is a timeline for you to follow. It's a guideline. It's not required, but those can help you. It's sort of like based on, at what time you complete what courses, and that will be a good time for you to take what examinations or certification examinations. So we will have some support, even though you're not required to do that. Many of our students, they do complete all the certification exam by the time they graduate from this program, so they can get ready and become certified.
Great. So it is time for us to wrap up this session. Maureen and Young, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I would say this is a very supportive program, teacher education in general here. We are excited to work with students of all backgrounds, and we're actually really excited to start to get students with more diversity, because we think that that's really important to be inclusive here and to demonstrate that to our local school districts. And if you have any questions, we're here to help answer your questions, so you could always follow up with us. We do work with program leaders, so sometimes if we can't answer your question quickly, then we'll refer you to the program leader and they'll answer your question also.
Great, thank you. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. The next academic breakout session is going to begin in 15 minutes. Please visit our events page to see what presentations are being offered throughout the day, including admissions presentations, financial aid, campus life and virtual tours. If you do have any question about this session or any other session that you join in on today, please send us an email to admissions@plattsburgh.edu. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.